So I'm super happy to be back on YouTube, and I thought this time, why don't we sit and analyze a bunch of sectors? But this time, why not we try something interesting? Instead of looking at a sector like power or automobiles, why don't we analyze a holding company? Some companies like this are Bajaj Finserv, L&T Financial Holdings, and JSW Holdings. So what we'll do is, we'll talk about these three companies and one extra company that you've probably not heard of before. So why don't we begin? So do you know what is a holding company? A holding company is nothing but this mother company, let's call it holding company, which actually invests in or owns other subsidiaries, so smaller companies that we call subsidiaries. So if you invest in the holding company, you've actually invested in all the other companies this holding company owns. Now, very quickly, if you look at the screen, can you tell me which of these companies is a holding company? I'm going to give you 2 seconds. I hope you said Berkshire Hathaway. And that's what Berkshire Hathaway does. It's a holding company. It actually owns, say, Apple, it owns Coca-Cola, or maybe even say American Express. Now, Warren Buffett is the person who actually buys all of his companies through this holding company called Berkshire Hathaway. So today we thought, why don't we teach a simple framework where you can analyze a holding company that's in India. And in India, we have quite a few, but today we're going to talk about only these three that I've written over here, which is Bajaj Finserv, we're going to talk about L&T Financial Holdings, and JSW Holdings. And I'm going to add one more company you've probably not heard of. So let's get started. How do we analyze a holding company? So the framework that we're going to learn is actually very simple. We won't deep dive into each of their fundamentals, but this framework will tell you, is this a good financial holding company or not? By the way, this works well on financial holding companies and not something like, say, a Tata Group. So let's jump straight to it and see what are we looking at. The first thing you need to do is you need to go to Screener or any screener you can find online to look at these numbers. But let's focus on the numbers first. It's pretty simple. First, you look at ROE and ROCE. These are profitability ratios. It tells you how much the business is making a profit or earning vis-a-vis the equity. It basically tells you what's the ROI on a per share level. Don't worry about how it works, but you need this to be above 15%. This is not easy to do, by the way. If companies maintain a 20-30 ROCE for a long period of time, they're considered very, very good companies. Another way to look at ROE and ROCE is just comparing it with another asset, like say a fixed deposit or a savings account. Do they give you 15%? Probably not, right? A lot of companies are earning that much on top of their asset base. The next thing that we look at is the interest coverage ratio. So I'll put this as interest coverage ratio, all right? This basically has to be greater than 2. Now, what does this mean? Every company has to pay interest. Now, let's suppose a worst case scenario happens. A COVID happens, which actually did happen. Chalo, a second COVID happens. Actually, that happened too. So something like this can happen again and again. And at that point, if the business does not have enough money in its account, how will it pay the interest that it has to the banks? So the interest coverage ratio greater than 2 means they have enough money to pay all the interest 2 times over. So this is actually very nice. A company that has 0.5 or 0.8 means they don't have enough money to even pay the interest today. So a company that has greater than 2 is a thumbs up. The next thing we'll look at is cash flow divided by EBITDA. Now, this is quite simple. Cash flow from operations basically means that it's able to convert all the revenue it's showing into actual cash. You know, sometimes a business can show that it's making revenue, but that doesn't turn into cash. It's just a receivable or something else, and it is due money, but they don't have the money. So converting it into real cash is important. and comparing that with its EBIT, that's its earnings before interest and taxes, should be greater than 1. This means that the company is able to convert all of its revenue into actual cash and it's not just paper profit. So this should be greater than 1. And finally, we should have something called earnings yield should be greater than 5%. This is the quick check you can do. Basically, anything above 5% is considered to be good. We'll do this. There's one more thing actually, I'll add it on the side, and this is promoter holding. This is a qualitative thing. Imagine you're buying a company and you think the future of the company is great. You have big promises, innovation ho raha hai, sab kuch ho raha hai. Lekin the owner of the company is selling his own stock. That's not good. Another problem is if you actually buy a holding company as an investment and the promoter doesn't control it. Some other investor does, like a lot of the startups nowadays. But you don't want that. You want the founders, you want the promoters to actually control the company, right? So you want that the promoter holding is greater than 50%. So you know that the promoters actually control the holding company. So very simple, I made it very simple for you. If we get 111 mark on each of these, we know that this holding company is good or not. So why don't we do something? Let's get our hands dirty. Let's go straight to Screener and I'll also open an Excel sheet and we'll just see whether the holding companies we have actually do well in all of this or not. So let's begin. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up any company over here. So I'll open Bajaj Finserv and let's just go through it. So our framework says ROE and ROCE greater than 15%. Let's see where we are. ROCE is 11 and ROE is 12. This is quite a pickle because we're close to 15. So what I'll do is, I can't give a 0 mark to it. Let's just give it half a mark. So over here, I'll put 0.5. Fair enough, right? You can't give 0, you can't give 1. It's decent, so 0.5. Then the next thing we're looking at is interest coverage ratio, right? Over here, that's 2.17. Great, that means they can pay all of their interest coverage 2 times over. It's greater than 2, so I'll give it 1 mark. I'll put 1 over here. Oh, sorry, this is also 0.5 and then 1. The next thing we have to look at is cash flow from operations divided by EBIT should be greater than 1. So let's just do this. We have to do this manually. So cash flow from operation is minus 33,000. Divide that by 20,000. Now you have a minus number. Go back to school. If you have a minus number, you divide, what will happen? Your answer will also be minus. So this is definitely a 0. We want it greater than 1. So this is a minus number. We'll put 0. Earnings yield should be greater than 5%. What's the earnings yield here? Where is it? 6%. Not bad. It's greater than 5%. 6% is pretty good. We'll give it a 1 mark. And promoter holding. For promoter holding, we can just scroll down and see the shareholding pattern. Look at this. 60% since 2019 all the way till now, March, to 60.77%. This is actually a very good thing. This means the promoter is not selling or buying his stake. It's staunch. It's there. It's not moving. Love it. We will turn this into a 1. So now we have successfully done a quick analysis of Bajaj Finserv. Now, is this a deep fundamental analysis? Of course not. We are just working on a quick way you can analyze and see, yaar, अच्छी company है कि नहीं, 10 minute में बता के बताता हूँ. So let's do this for a few more companies and see what we get. I'll copy this. What's the next company? L&T Finance Holdings. Let's open this up. L&T Finance Holdings. So let's just quickly go through this framework. I'll go a little faster this time and we'll see what we get. In the end, we'll have all 3 companies and we can see which one won. So I think that'll be kind of fun to see what happens. So L&T Finance, okay. ROE, ROCE, let's look, 6.8, 4.66. Very bad. It's much under 15%. So I'm going to give this a big, bold under. Next is interest coverage ratio. That should be greater than 1. Let's see what we have over here. Interest coverage is 1.2. It should be like 2, right? So it only has 20% more than what it actually owes. This means if there's a crisis situation, it will get a little tough for them to pay the interest. I'd like to give it an under as well. So I'll give this a 0. Next is the CFO divided by EBIT should be greater than 1. Let's quickly do this. Cash flow from operations is 6078 divided by EBIT. I'll do this in front of you. So 6078 divided by 6988. The answer is 0.86. We want it to be greater than 1. Unfortunately, I have to give this a 0 as well. Us investors, I know it's so hard to run this companies in general, but as investors, you have to be really, really strict and just give it the correct mark. So let's see what we get next. Earnings yield 5%. And over here, we have an earnings yield of 7.37%. Not bad at all. So let's give this a 1. Promoter holding should be greater than 50%. Let's scroll down and see it's 63%. Not bad. That's greater than 50%. And it's been like that for a long time. Super. I'll give that a 1. Finally, let's add the last company over here. And that's JSW Holdings. Okay, this time you guys do it with me. Hopefully you'll give me the answer before I actually write it. ROE, ROCE greater than 15. What do we have here? ROCE 1, ROE 0.8%. This is pretty obvious. I'm going to give it a big 0. 0. One thing you have to remember, don't be enamored by a brand name. Just because it's Bajaj or L&T doesn't mean that it's good. In this case, I didn't give the name. It's JSW Holdings, right? So if the numbers speak for themselves, if it's 0, it's 0. Interest coverage ratio should be greater than 2. And over here, I don't see any number. So I'll also give this a 0. CFO divided by EBIT, over here 130 divided by 180. Of course, when you do that, you will get a 0.72. This is again lower. I'm going to give it another 0. Earnings yield greater than 5%. Chalo, ye dekhte hain how it is. It's 4.8. It's pretty close, right? Let's give it a 1. I'll give it a 1. It's really close. So I'll give it a 1. And promoter holding greater than 50%. Scroll down. Let's see, where do we have? Okay, it is 66%. Now here's the interesting thing. From September 2019, it's gone from 61% to 66%. Think as an investor, the owner of the company you've invested in is buying more of its shares. That's definitely good. I wish I could give a 2 for this, but I'll give it a 1. And we have a 1 here. So basically Bajaj Finserv, L&T, JSW. But here's the googly, okay? I'm going to add one more company you've probably never heard of. And let's see how that company does. Shall we do that? Okay. This company is called Kama Holdings. It's an interesting name, but it is the holding company for SRF. SRF runs a chemical business, a really good chemicals business. So let's see how this does. Kama, if you type Kama Holdings, we'll get these numbers. Let's quickly do it. So ROCE, ROE is 34% and 22%. That's pretty high. So let's give 1 point there, 1 point there. Interest coverage ratio should be greater than 2, right? Interest coverage ratio over here is, where did it go? Oh, it's 23. So they can pay 23 times the interest they owe. That's really good. I wish I could give this like a 2 or something, 1. Then we have, what's next? CFO divided by EBIT, right? So if you divide 2,133 divided by 2,709, you'll get a 0.78. I'll give it a 0. And earnings yield should be greater than 5%. Over here, the earnings yield is 27% for Kama Holding. That's really high. I'll give that a 1. Promoter holdings is greater than 50%. It's 75 throughout and it's not moved at all. Now, I know what you're thinking. I have to give a disclaimer. I don't own Kama Holdings and I don't plan to buy it also. My point was very simple. You've not heard of Kama Holdings. It has better fundamentals in this framework versus more better known brand names like Bajaj, L&T. My point's very simple. Don't buy Kama Holdings. Don't buy any of these companies. My point is, don't go after the brand name. If you're looking at any of these companies, forget about the logo, forget about how nice the ads are, forget about everything, and just look at the numbers and then look at the qualitative part later. So if you want to go deeper into any of these companies and you have more suggestions, more things you know about them, tell me about the management, tell me about the profitability, tell me about what they're going to build over the next 5 years, where the macro trends are going. Put it in the comments below. We will enthusiastically reply and debate and just understand whether these companies are good or not. This was just the starting point. I hope you found this useful. We want to make videos very, very often now. So you need to encourage us. Hit the subscribe button and write in the comments that you want more of this and you enjoyed this. Hopefully this was useful. See you in the next video.